All right, welcome everybody. I'm Stuart Schaefer. I'm the chair of the Cincinnati chapter of the P&G Alumni Network. And this is our first event of 2024, so Happy New Year. It's really going to be, I think, one of my favorites of the year. It's already my favorite of the year. So both because of the people that we have tonight and also the topic. I had to tell them a story that I used to work in the GO in the 90s, and I would get off the elevator, and there'd be a big product map of all the inventions coming out of P&G R&D. And I thought, wow, who was responsible for all that? And it turns out I was Gordon, so here we are. So what I'm going to do is introduce our moderator, and then she'll take it from there. With that, I will turn it over to you, Meredith.
Thank you, Stuart. And thank you to everyone for being here tonight. It is a real pleasure to sit here with Gordon Brunner, Bill James, and John Pepper to celebrate the launch of Gordon and Bill's book, Superior Products, a winning strategy demanding game-changing innovation. As we all know, P&G is the world's largest consumer products company, competing in 10 global categories with the leading product in each of those categories. Over the years, we've heard a lot about how P&G goes to market and markets those products, but Superior Products is the first to ever look at all the technical innovation behind those products, and the systems, culture, and the leadership principles that produce the products and then sustain that innovation over time. Plenty of companies talk about the importance of product superiority, but what I felt really set Gordon and Bill's work apart was how they operationalized that product superiority. And I think that you're going to find many lessons in this work that are relevant to the innovation process today, regardless of the sector that you're in. Gordon and Bill spent their entire careers, over 75 years, in active research and top-level management in research and development at P&G. They were colleagues from their career beginnings and crossed paths throughout the decades. Gordon was a legendary head of R&D under 4 CEOs. And interestingly, he was the first and only R&D employee on the company's board of directors. Bill was Brunner's chief of staff, and he led the work that established the company's first recognition society for researchers, and we'll hear more about that tonight, as well as the widely acclaimed technology career path. Both had a major influence on attracting and motivating top researchers to deliver the product and innovations that have become the multi-billion-dollar brands that P&G has today. And of course, John Pepper needs no introduction. He's joined us today to add his perspective on the importance of product superiority to P&G's business results. So let's dive into the stories and the strategic changes that Gordon and Bill made during their decades at leading P&G product innovation. I think you're going to find plenty of insights tonight that are relevant to innovation today. So Gordon, let's start with you. Why did you decide to write this book, and why did you call it Superior Products?
Poor judgment, no. Well, thank you, Stuart, for putting this event together. Thanks to my special friend, John Pepper, for joining Bill and I tonight, and thank you, Meredith, and thank you all for joining us. Well, I thought about writing this book for some 25 years. Those of you who are an author and have thought about writing and publishing know this is not for the faint-hearted. So I thought about it. I had these stories in my mind. I had a fabulous career, 40-year career at Procter & Gamble in R&D. I had the chance for wonderful experiences, saw major new brands, multi-billion-dollar brands come forward, 5 of them. Some 20 different brands and products which are now on the market. And Bill and I had a chance to work on many aspects of the whole innovation process, the reward system, the technical career structure, how to constantly try new structures for innovation. We had all these experiences. So I had all these stories. Mary Ellen would often tell me, "You've got to write this." And of course I would back off. I would tell these stories, and interesting, people loved them. These old stories, 20 to 50 years old, why did they love them? Because the products were what they use today, products they love today, and they enjoyed finding out how they were invented. There's a lot written about Procter & Gamble leadership. people like John Pepper. There's a lot written about the brands, how they were marketed. There's nothing in 187 years written about how these great products were invented. So I had a chance to do that. If I didn't do it, it would be lost forever, because there's no recording of this effort. This is the only time it ever could be recorded, and so that motivated me to try to put this book together. I was fortunate to have Bill James join me. Bill and I have worked together for a lot of years, and he was my chief of staff when I was head of R&D. He was head of human resource in global R&D, and so we had a chance to work on things that could make better for researchers, better for innovation, and we had a chance to talk about them. And he joined me. He probably thinks it was a mistake, but anyway, I was glad to have him, and we've walked along this path. So Meredith, that's a little bit about why I did this.
John, why were you so supportive of this book when Gordon came to you?
When Gordon and I go way back, we go back to, the early 1970s in this country, and then time together in Europe, where our families grew up together. And when he told me he had this book in mind, I said, you just got to do this. And I'm so glad he did. The reason for this is pretty straightforward. One, as Gordon said, this tells the story of innovation, product innovation, in a way never told before, granularly, case by case. These are stories. These are interesting stories, both for the technology, but for the people who were involved and who did it, and the challenges they faced and overcame in doing it. And as Gordon mentioned, if he didn't do this with Bill, I don't think it would have ever been done, and that would have been a shame. A shame particularly for future P&G leaders. There'll be a broad audience for this book, but the one I care about are P&G leaders, because I don't want them to ever fail to recognize that while we have to bring all these things together to be successful in manufacturing, in marketing, in finance, if we don't have outright product superiority that consumers see and feel meet their needs, we're dead ducks. We've got to do that. Our successes and when we failed relate entirely to that. Two other things that really turned me on about the book. One that you mentioned, Meredith. It not only goes over the stories, and they're fascinating stories, but it gets into what Bill did so much, and that is, what's the culture you create that spawns this, that rewards it? What reward systems do we have? What celebration of heroes do we create? All these things are in the book. All these things were done under the leadership of these two men. They're vital. And the third thing that I love about it is it gives us a chance to recognize heroes. There's so many R&D heroes. I often said, I'd like to build a statue to that person and stick it out in front of the P&G building. The person who created 2-in-1 shampoo, created Always. I'll build a statue to them. Well, we don't build statues for our inventors, but we can celebrate them as individuals, and this book does that. So I'm just mighty glad to see us here tonight to present this first group, to be able to see it. You'll enjoy the book. It's very presentable if you take a look at it. It almost looks like it could be a, what would be a classic? What do you call those things? Comic book?
Yeah, I mean, it is engaging.
It's very
with the
visual.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I probably demean it as a comic book, but it's extremely visual.
There are some funny parts, though. There are some funny parts. They've injected some humor into this.
Okay, well, that's it. I want to do anything Gordon and Bill I can to support getting this out. And I want that R&D organization of ours, this generation, the next generation, 20 years from now, to be reading this book and probably a supplement to it that will come along to talk about what we've learned in those 20 years.
Thank you. So, Gordon, let's go back to you for a moment. We've heard from one CEO. You work for 4 CEOs, though. So talk to us a little bit about their different approaches to R&D and how they supported you. I'm trying to save Bill's voice.
You want Bill?
Well, Bill, would you like to take this?
Well, I'd like to talk about our workforce.
Yeah.
If you want world-class products, you need world-class researchers. And we've been able to attract and maintain that quality of people. And when you ask what really motivates them, I'm reminded of a quote from a former president. It's the work, stupid. That's why they're attracted to P&G, to work on cutting-edge products, to mingle with other world-class researchers, and to see their work show up in the marketplace. That's what motivates them. There's always the question of reward and recognition. Researchers who've been around for a while see some of their fellow researchers recognized by becoming managers. They have a nice office, they have access to administrative help, they sit around and write. Keep track of the work that's going on, but they don't see any outward recognition for their work. As Gordon said in the book, you can't wear your paycheck on your forehead. So we started to take a look at what we could do with regard to doing a better job of recognizing our researchers. We had a series of in-residence seminars covering the whole topic of managing innovation and the uncertainties associated with it. And Gordon would meet with the group of 20 people afterwards, and invariably the subject would come up. Mr. Brunner, how come we don't have a technical career path? And Gordon would say, well, we do. We keep track of our top development managers and our top technologists. But it's sort of invisible, and it was invisible. And after a while, I think he got tired of having to field that question. So we took a look at other organizations and what they were doing. We had access to a large group of companies through the Industrial Research Institute. I headed their Human Resource Committee, and I got to take a look firsthand at what they did. And we identified some things that we really liked. One of which was the creation of a technical society. And we describe it in the book, where they recognize they're absolutely top researchers, men and women who are responsible for generating the ideas or the innovative pathway to get products in the marketplace. And we like this, and this for the basis of the Victor Mills Society. Vic Mills was arguably the most innovative researcher in the history of Procter & Gamble from the time he joined in 1927 to when he retired in the early 1960s. And we honored him by naming the society after him. We recognized in 1990 the top dozen research technologists from around the world in a big event down at Riverfront Coliseum before all of the people in Cincinnati, all of the R&D people. Ed Arzt and Gordon Brunner presented them with their Victor Mills Society medals and the recognition from the audience. It was an absolutely terrific event. One of the key researchers said it was the most important event in his lifetime. But we honored men and women who put products in the marketplace, structured tissues and towels, 2-in-1 shampoo, a whole variety of other products. Once we did that, people said, I want to be like one of them. How do I get there? And honestly, we didn't have a good answer. So we formed a team that represented all of our organizations, about 25 people. And I led the effort to develop a technical career path for our technologists that is visible to all the people in the organization. A number of companies have tried this with mixed success. And the reason they failed is because it was pretty cheap to give out titles. So they gave out the titles, but not the pay and status. And we decided that one of the foundations of a technical ladder was to ensure that the pay was equivalent to the managers at the same level. It was a single path, technical career path. Everybody comes in at various levels of a single path, and then after some period of time, the outstanding ones branch either into a management or a technologist path, and they progress that way. We created this in 1993 and 1994 and rolled it out. It was a terrific event. It made public exactly who the top technologists were. We had some instances where we recognized people who were labeled as technicians who were honored as being senior research scientists, equivalent to a director in the organization. It was a tremendous thing that we created, and 30 years later, it still exists, and we understand, still doing well.
Thank you, Bill. I felt like that was one of the most compelling lessons that I feel like people can bring to today's work and innovation is just the focus on, first of all, letting these experts do their work. I mean, that's so challenging, I think, in today's world, too, with so many things coming at you, really giving people space for that, and then recognizing and rewarding that so clearly. It was really, that was one of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah, just a comment. Just a comment about the Victor Mills Society. You know, at that point in time, we had passed 160 years as a company. But for 160 years, we had no formal system ever to recognize individual achievement outside of a manager. This was a big deal. All of a sudden, recognizing the quality of the work of an individual in this organization. We thought when we executed it that we would be accused, as research and development, we'd be accused of being favorites. We had, snuck through and created this system, and we would be criticized for it. Well, quite the opposite. It was applauded throughout the company. Every function, be it marketing, product supply, finance, chose to do their own systems of rewarding these individuals. So it was a watershed change in terms of recognizing excellence throughout the company. Something that, has really stood the time. I've gotten letters over the years from people in other functions saying, thank goodness that research and development took this lead to create mastery, to create recognition of mastery. It changed my life, changed my career, and so it was a watershed. It was really a watershed change at that point in time.
I'd like to recognize two people in the audience who are at the highest levels of the career system. Yen Che and Tuan Trin. Please stand up.
Bill.
We'll probably get a chance to talk a little bit later about the activities that were involved here with these people.
Okay, one more question before we dive into the stories, because I think we do all want to get to the product stories. But the other theme that comes through in superior products is the importance of top-level buy-in in R&D and in the innovation process. You work for 4 CEOs. I mean, tell us a little bit about different approaches and what worked.
This could be dangerous. No. You know, I would say at the start that to have an innovative company, it has to be led at the top. It has to be led by the CEO. Innovation is tough. No one sort of stands up and says, hey, I want to take on a risky project. It requires the CEO to demand it, demand innovation. We need superior products in every place, every business we have. And it's so important. And in many companies, innovation gets delegated. It gets delegated into the organization. The CEO makes good words about it, but there's no real demanding of it throughout the organization. Fortunately, in Procter & Gamble, this has been the case over these 187 years. I was fortunate to work with some great leaders. It started with John Smale in 1987. That was my first time I worked for a CEO. John had become CEO, and there's no one in the history of the company that has been more supportive and more demanding of superior products than John Smale, except maybe our founders. John, when he took over as CEO, the very first interview he had with Moonbeams, we had Moonbeams at that time. I don't think Moonbeams exists anymore, but it was the company magazine. And they did an interview with John, and John, in his opening comment, he said, you know, we're known as a marketing company, but we're really an R&D company. Straightforward. It rocketed through the company. I mean, it shattered the windows, if you will, because it was such a dramatic statement on the part of John. But he was a demanding boss, but a very fair boss, and he was a wonderful mentor for me. But throughout his tenure, he did things to really drive product innovation. He started individual product reviews with every director in the organization at least once a year. And he focused on a big edge product. That was our term at that time. We're going to develop big edge products. And these products were designed to make sure that they were significantly better than the best competitor. He would go around with these product reviews, talk to the R&D director, and by gosh, that R&D director better be prepared to talk about his big ideas. And it sort of just permeated the whole culture of the company at that time to focus on these big ideas. When John retired, he took some of his own money and he created an innovation award for young researchers. This was given not to somebody who had accomplished something significant, but something who had developed an idea that had the potential to be big. And that gets played out every year with the entire organization with a video. So John becomes very well known to today's researchers, just as he was some 30 years ago. Ed Arts was the second CEO I worked for. Ed was a tough manager, hard driver, much different than John, in the sense he supported R&D tremendously. But he would say, Gordon, I don't really want to be involved. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to follow whatever you want me to do, but I'm going to stay out of your way. And that was his approach. But what was he good at? He was outstanding at executing. He could rally an organization to accomplish things that had never been before accomplished. And I'll talk about Pantene. You know, previously to roll a new product across the world would take us 3, 4, maybe 10 years as we were growing up as a company. Pantene was a breakthrough. Ed saw the merits of putting vitamins as a reason why into a shampoo. He used resources throughout the world in Taiwan and Japan to create the packaging and the copy. And he turned to the organization and said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get this every country in the world in 10 months. And everybody just looked at it and said, well, you know, Ed, it's no way. Well, we did. And Pantene became the leading brand, the leading shampoo brand in the world in less than a year. There's also a story in the book about the time we got into a fight with Unilever. Unilever came out with a detergent with a big campaign around the using of a new accelerator in their detergent to activate the bleach. We knew a lot about this, and we knew it was faulty. We knew that with time, it would build up on fabrics and create weakness of fabrics and cause holes. We met with Ed, and we said, Ed, this is a problem. They've got a faulty product. This stuff builds up, particularly on colors. And we showed him the data, and Ed said, no, and we said, further, if the consumer uses this and then switches to Ariel, which is our brand, we could be accused of causing these problems. Ed said, no way. Get me a meeting with Unilever tomorrow. And took a day, but we marched into Unilever in London. He laid it on the table. He said, look, you've got a faulty product. If you don't believe us, we're going to go public. Well, it was a war. Front page in all the newspapers throughout the world. Ed stood tall. But the point I would leave with, he only asked me once what the problem was. He never came back after 6 or 9 months of daily infighting at newspaper headings. He never once asked me again, are you sure? I was asking myself every few hours whether I was sure. But that was his trust in R&D. And of course, we won that battle, and it showed the tremendous ability of P&G scientists to really understand the science behind what we were doing. The third CEO was my good friend, John Pepper. John and I go back a long ways, go back to things like Bounce, but we both landed in Brussels in Europe in the same time. Our families arrived, John from Italy, I came from the United States. We were undertaking a big challenge in Europe around creating European operations from 8 independent countries. It was a fantastic thing, but in that process, our families had to adjust to a whole new way of living, and we became very close as families. Thanksgivings, Christmas, and you know, my children got to know his children, and we had a wonderful time. So I had that background. John and I worked together, we're close friends, and so that was an easy relationship for me. We had no trouble communicating. We worked well together. John, of course, was so people-oriented. So he was the soul of the company. When he got in front of the R&D people that I was involved in, they came away inspired, feeling so great about themselves, so wanting to go forward and do what they had to do. And that was John. And of course, he was so principled. I remember one particular story was, you know, we had come off the Rely experience, having to pull Rely tampon off the market because we couldn't be sure about its safety with toxic shock syndrome. And John came and said, you know, the consumer still is very needy of this kind of a product. We want to buy Tampax. But what I need from me was assurance that this is safe to do, that we can put the company's name behind acquiring this brand. Well, that was a tough challenge, but very important for our company to support this consumer need in a safe and effective way. So we put a team together, we worked hard, and we had to convince ourselves and convince the board and convince everything that this was the right thing to do. And John was pretty adamant in that whole process that we get this right. And we did. And it's been a successful brand, and it's grown ever since. The fourth CEO I worked for was Dirk Jager. Dirk was highly energetic, absolutely committed to do everything he could to bring innovation to the marketplace. Get rid of everything in the way, do everything we need to do tomorrow. I don't want to hear anything more about what can't be done. Let's just get it done. And he was a champion of doing whatever it took to create great products. One of the things that we did, which was very novel, we created an internal venture program. You know, venture programs are, as many of you are involved in this, with startups, creating an idea, try to move it forward. Well, we thought, well, we've got the best people in the world here at Procter & Gamble. Why can't we ask everybody out there if they have an idea, a big idea, an idea that's not being worked on in the company, but something that we think could really be good, have them bring it forward. Talk to us. If it's good, we'll support them. We'll bring them out of their operation. We'll support it. Crazy. How do you do that in a company as large as Procter & Gamble? We did. We created a small marketing organization. We did this. And we created major brands, Swiffer, Febreze. We created a host, 12 other products which are still in the market today. Crest White Strips, Thermacare, products like Glad, Glad odor and bags, and Glad, you know, the Glad products, if you use, you know, the Force Flex, the odor, guess what? Those are our technologies. We license them but that's a profit stream for Procter & Gamble that's very, very handsome. We created a line, which is anti-probiotic. We started Mr. Clean car washes. We started Tide cleaners, which are still active. These things all happened in a way that was just, it was just phenomenal. Of course, for me, this was like, you know, Christmas time. I mean, you know, because we had so many ideas, and we could bring them forward. So that was a great time. So, you know, you look at that, those 4 people I worked for, you say, well, how lucky can you be? I mean, great leaders who gave me a lot of room, and looking back, we can feel very proud of what was accomplished. One of those venture programs was Febreze. And Tuan Trink is here. Tuan, stand up. I hope I have the time to tell this story afterwards, but Tuan singly came up with the idea, painted the vision of what it can be, indicated he thought it could be an iconic brand where this technology could be moved to all kinds of brands, which exactly happened. No one thought this was a good idea. The market was low margin. It was a market that we had not been interested in as a company. Changed the whole game. And maybe I'll have a chance a little bit later to talk about it.
Thank you. Thanks for taking us on that journey. I feel like you have such an interesting perspective of all of those leaders and how, you know, they worked with product superiority and in the R&D work. Okay, so I do want to turn to storytelling and just ask each of you to talk about 1 or 2 of your most memorable product development and launch journeys. Bill, would you be willing, we just heard a little bit from Gordon, would you be willing to share a story of one of your most memorable product development stories?
Well, I was involved in the development of Olestra. It was a product developed at our research laboratory by a very, very gifted research scientist. It was a molecule of fat and sugar that became indigestible. It moved through the digestive system without being absorbed. So it was a nil-calorie fat. John Smale moved the product from Miami Valley to food product development, where I was director, at the time and basically said, commercialize this. And we took a look at it. We created a vision of what it might be, starting with really ethical products like margarine and salad oil, and eventually evolving to salted snacks and other kind of products. It was a difficult project because we had to figure out how to invent the process to make this. We could make it at a small scale, but we had to make it at a large scale, and ultimately built a $100 billion plant at Iverdale to produce it. We had major regulatory issues to overcome and set about to figure out a strategy to do so. Let me tell you, the product, you should probably have experienced, was absolutely incredible. Potato chip or French fry made with Olestra was indistinguishable from the product made with regular fat. But it was a torturous venture. It went on for 25 years. I did the first part of it for 5 or 6 years, and then moved on to human resource. At this point, Gordon picked it up, personally involved in managing it with the Food Product Development Group.
Yeah, well, you know, at the time we were ready to go to market, the product we were going to execute was called Wow Potato Chips. It was a partnership with Frito-Lay. They were very excited about it, and we saw a great vision of what this can be. Huge market, huge profit opportunity. There was a lot of debate that went on. I remember I was on the board, John was on the board. There was a lot of debate at that time about whether this was the right thing to do. We had one of our board members, Ralph Snyderman, who was the Chancellor of Medical Affairs at Duke University, who said, you know, folks, this is too big a gamble. You need to establish a health pedigree for Olestra before you try to execute it in a product. We should be developing a line of health, pre-prepared meals, for example, using Olestra to produce medical benefits. Well, of course, you can imagine when you compared that opportunity relative to a huge market with potato chips, it was tough to sell. But I think his point was very true, which is that had we established this product as a medical benefit, which it was, it might have changed the whole game. Well, anyway, we went into the market with Wow Potato Chips. We were a sitting duck for the food police in Washington, the Ralph Nader spin-offs. You probably aren't old enough to know who Ralph Nader was, but no, we got attacked. We got attacked for every weakness that could be found in Olestra. We created a terrible image. We tried to fight back, but we lost that battle. And Olestra's image got damaged, and we withdrew from the market. But you look back on that, it's one of the great technical inventions at Procter & Gamble of all times. Absolutely phenomenal. And yet, we couldn't bring it home. So it's a story that you read it and weep, but it's one at least I would like to do over again.
Gordon, I'm going to ask you to continue and talk about the flip side. So we started off with one of the most challenging product development stories, but talk to us about one of the greatest hits, where you had a big product edge, and it was a huge success.
Well, I'll go back and talk about Febreze. Tuan is here, and he deserves the recognition for what this was. Here we had a venture effort, so we were looking for our people to bring ideas forward. Tuan came forward with his idea. Tuan is from Vietnam. He's a PhD chemist. I'm not going to get it right, Tuan. Don't hold me to that. But I know he went to a great school, University of Wisconsin. That's where I went. But he went back. He became a professor in Saigon University, came to work at Procter & Gamble. And over the course of his career, he became extremely knowledgeable and I would say semi in love with a compound called cyclodextrin. Cyclodextrin is a sugar derivative. It's an unusual molecule. For a non-chemist, you can think about it as a circular compound, circular structure. It's very safe. It's used today in a lot of applications in pharmaceuticals for different properties, modifications. But Tuan had this idea that this molecule can trap odors, not cover odors, trap odors. Its structure will allow compounds that are water-soluble to be trapped and held. And he had all kinds of demonstrations of fabrics that had been treated, and we were kind of excited about what we saw. And he also said, you know, this is so broad that it can be put in a wide range of products. It can be put in garbage bags and fabric softeners and laundry detergents, and we can make this an iconic brand, just like Intel. We all listened to this and he said, wow, this is really good. So, you know, Dirk Jager took about half a minute to decide we're going to do this, and so we brought it forward. Well, we got very little support from the marketing organization. They said, yeah, we don't want to get in this business. I mean, this is cats and dogs. I mean, this is all stuff with bathtubs. You know, we need real stuff. I said, no, we'll give it a shot. So we created Febreze, and we went into the market. And we priced it high, and we felt, well, this is going to be a product for people in a high-income bracket who want everything, who want the perfect odor control and so on. Well, this thing hit the market and exploded. All of a sudden, we found out, my goodness, the market, people are using this for things we never visualized. Low-income families, their rugs were bad, their drapes were bad, their upholstery was bad. It gave them a new life. They converted their whole house to a new pleasance. I suspect their husbands probably got a treatment too, but the whole deal. Students stopped laundering. Students stopped washing clothes. This worked. And boy, covering up the Saturday night party, great. You know, so this thing just exploded. And the vision of what it could do went around the world. It became a multi-billion-dollar brand in a very short period of time. Today, it's still, if you go into the store, you're going to see Febreze in a myriad of products. You're going to see it in Glad bags, which incidentally we license to them. So it's a marvelous achievement by really a single individual. Great story. Great story. Could it happen? No, it can't happen. Yeah, it did happen. And the fellow who was behind it is here with us tonight. So,
I feel like that brings up a couple concepts from the book. I mean, the valley of death that each product goes through, and also your descriptions of what a great technologist and a researcher is. And I feel like I'm interpreting this with my lens, but I feel like stubborn as hell is what I feel like I think of as like you will not let it go. I mean, you're listening, you're taking input, but you are going to take this over the finish line, even if other parts of the organization don't believe in it, because you do. And I thought that was really compelling as you described that kind of perfect technologist. Okay, I do want to hear from you too, John. Tell us about working with these guys and what one or two of your favorite product development stories are.
I want to talk about really pick up on what you've been saying, Gordon. That's the role of, I like to describe it as human agency. And the stories, two stories I'll tell briefly, really bring to life in a way the same as is the case with you, Tuan, how it takes a champion with a great idea and enormous perseverance to move it through. Going back to Tampax, I'm not even sure you're aware of this, but pivotal to my ultimate decision that we could go ahead were two people who I'd never met before, Carolyn Burkholz and Mary Jensen, who I had not met, and they were in product regulation. And they called me one day in my office and they said, "John, we suspect you're struggling with the question whether it's safe to introduce and buy Tampax." I said, "You're right. That's the biggest issue on our mind." And they said, "We'd like to come and visit you in your office." And they came to my office at the time I was the CEO and sat down. There were the three of us. And they said, "We want to assure you you can go ahead and buy Tampax. We have been following Tampax and all the other entries in terms of safety, even when we got out of the Rely business, because we were concerned about the consumer, and we wanted to be sure that the instructions were correct." They didn't know me, or they know who I was. I want to tell a story, I guess, about Tide. How could one, not having been associated with P&G for 60 years, as I have, 40 as an active employee now and 20 retired, not think of Tide as you think about a story that involves individuals, though I will not be able to mention many by name. Tide was introduced in 1946. What is that, 78 years ago? It has been the target of every other laundry brand in the United States ever since. Hundreds have shot at Tide. A couple of the companies have abandoned the business, Colgate in particular, because they said they couldn't keep up with the pace of product innovation that Procter & Gamble was bringing to Tide, to the laundry category. Tide's household penetration today is within 1 point of the highest it's been throughout its whole history. Over 40% of all the homes in the United States have Tide in them today, despite all the competition. This has not been an easy road. We lost 25% of our share on Tide, 25%, twice during our history. One time it was because we had to focus on phosphate replacement. That was in the 70s, so we couldn't be working on upgrades. We've come back each time. It's been a multiple functional effort, needless to say, sales, marketing, but at the core of the recovery every time has been product innovation. It was enzymes and powder, very, very tricky, sensitive issue in the 1960s. In the 1980s, we came along with Tide with bleach. That was a very difficult thing, to put bleach into a granular detergent and have it stable. Then you had Tide Liquid. That was extremely controversial. It almost was on a new brand, and we almost didn't put it on Tide. That would have been right up there with the mistake we made in not putting shape diapers on Pampers and from the very beginning. And of course, we've had since 2011 pods. Pods today is a $2 billion business in the United States. 82% of all the pods business that's done in the United States is a Procter & Gamble brand. 60% of all the pods are Tide, and the rest are Gain from the same technology. We had unidose laundry products when I joined the company in 1963. It was called Tide Ready Packs. None of you are old enough to remember that. We dropped them in the wash and hoped they'd dissolve, and sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. And we came along later with Salvo, but you know what? We didn't give up. We saw demographics were changing. We figured out how we could get much better cleaning than we had before, and we came out and we took over the market based on that technology, which I have to emphasize also on the process and manufacturing side. It's one of those great victories. If you went all the way back to the beginning, Tide as the very first detergent was an under-the-cover project. They were told not to work on it. There were those that didn't want to see soap superseded. And they went undercover to develop that in its early days. There were a lot of people who felt we'd run out the gamut on single use. I mean, going ahead with the pods again, that was very controversial. That took a lot of energy beyond just the technology itself. One other very quick one. It would be impossible not to talk about CPF and CPN, our Bounty and our Charmin business. There was certainly no business that was closer to the valley of death than what has become the leading tissue towel business. Morgan's went to Harness back in about '63, moved him off the soap business that Harness had been on. He didn't want to leave it, to run the paper business. And Morgan's told him, you've got 1 year to make this profitable or we're getting out. We'd acquired Charmin in '57. But Harness didn't want to do it, but Morgan's made it clear this isn't a choice. I need you to do it. And he asked if he could get all the people he wanted on the business, and he got Tecklenburg and he got Arzt, came over. Any event, he got to the point where Harness was writing a recommendation to Morgan's to close the business. He'd been on it a year and concluded it wouldn't work. And Fred Wells came in to his office just before the recommendation went forward and said something, and I can't quote him. He said, I think we have the technology we need. I can't be certain, but I know it's needed. And that turned out to be CPF and the softness and strength. And it took us through the first generation. And Bounty became a 20-share brand, and Charmin was much stronger. But there was another valley of death, and that came in, I guess, Gordon, in the 90s. Would have been, or the 80s. 87. And we were getting good shares, but we were making no money. Virtually no money. And John said, I'm not going to build one more paper machine. It's over. We're through. And we'd already been pouring a lot of money into the new technology, what at the time was called CPN. And I'll never forget the meeting. It was the Blue Book meeting. And a proposal was being made to John to make another investment to keep going on CPN. And I think his words were along the lines, I just don't see how we can justify it. It's not working. We've been at this for years, plowed tens of millions of dollars into it. And I'll never forget what Paul Trokin and Bob Haxby, they were across the desk no more than 6 feet away, and they looked John in the eye and they said, John, don't give up now. We will make this work. Trust us. And we signed a check, and on we went. This is a story laced with human agency. In the invention itself, hard, and the willingness to stand up behind it and put your whole person, your whole career on the line. And there are countless stories like this, because that's what it's taken to make the highest demand you can of a boss. Trust me on this one. And a couple of times in my career, one or two, I wish we hadn't gotten a proposal through that turned out the proposal would have been the right thing to do. And I wish I had invoked those words. Trust us on this one. We can make this work. They weren't 100% certain they could, but they knew darn well that we needed to try and that the output from it would be so good. Bounty's an amazing brand, so is Charmin. Bounty today has over a 40 share of all our brands, I think. If you go to a competitor's and ask, what's the best brand on the market? People buying other brands in the paper towel category, whether they be Brunner or whatever they are, will say Bounty is the best brand. And this has put enormous emphasis on our need to control costs, our manufacturing efficiencies, to do it. But make no mistake, and that's why this book is so important. if we aren't creating the new CPFs and the CPNs and the new Febreze technologies and the things that have made always the #1 brand in the world, and Pantene, as Gordon says, the #1 shampoo, and Head & Shoulders the #2 shampoo using this technology, unless we're developing those things with a culture of the kind that Bill has helped create, we're not going to continue to grow. And our ability to hold our position as well as we have, and I'm an outsider, I'm a consumer, but I think the P&G leadership group has done a great job during COVID and the need to take prices up. And the fact that we've been able to do that and not lose share, it's because of product superiority. That's it. And where we haven't done a good job, Lester, is not really a technology issue, that's a strategy issue. Sometimes you've got to be patient. IAMS was patient. When they created IAMS, they spent a lot of time in vets. I'm not sure we would have spent a lot of time establishing in vets, but sometimes you have to be patient. I'll wrap it up there.
Thank you. The product stories that are coming to life here and are in this book are definitely the magic.
They're people's stories.
Thank you.
They're
You're
really
right.
people's stories. That's what they are.
And we highlight the people, the inventors, the
They are.
technologists,
Yes.
the people who moved the products into the marketplace, who came down to your office to talk about them because they were so committed.
Totally committed. This was theirs, and they wouldn't let it go. But that's that kind of ownership. I loved what you said. It's the work. Why do we do it? It's the work. I remember the director of a Pixar movie. I was talking to him. I said, "Why are you so animated about Up?" He said, "Are you wanting to get an Academy Award?" "Yeah, I like Academy Award." "Are you concerned about the financial returns for Up?" "Yeah, we got to get good box office numbers." I said, "But that's not what it really is." I said, "What really is it that turns you on?" He said, "What turns me on is I'm going to have a movie that is going to positively impact people's lives." He said it better than that. But it's going to be a movie people will experience, and they will feel good because of that. And I think when I heard him say that, I thought of P&G R&D people creating products because it will make a difference in consumers' lives and respond to something they need in a unique way. And that's what creativity is all about, whether it's an Apple phone or whether it's a new technology in detergent. It's creating something that's real.
It takes a lot of commitment to go there and smell people's armpits.
I can remember Seal Kuzma, having the showers where we listen to them taking their shower, and how's your hair feel now? And we thought this idea of market research in the showers was kind of weird, but proved to be pretty important.
Said, "You mean you're going to make an upper-level technologist pay him or her as a director coming from a technician job?" He says, "I can't believe it. We'll never do that." Well, we did, because the management of the organization was committed. It was a change in many organizations. There are different cultures all over the world. Japan is quite different than Europe, for example. But we got buy-in. It took a little bit longer to get there, but they became committed because they saw their top technologists being recognized, and they realized what a lack there was before that.
This is interesting because my book published, and a friend of mine in Madison, Wisconsin, he's a medical doctor. He just invented, he brought out a new way to measure ear infection. And he read my book and he called me. He says, "Gordon," he says, "I'm just launching this thing." He says, "Do I have to come up with a follow-up invention?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, if you want to keep a product in business, you've got to keep innovating. The product that doesn't innovate dies. And particularly in today's world where you have everybody so quick to emulate and copy and move, You have to, you know, the great story at Procter & Gamble about this, and it's in the book, is a story between Tide and Ivory. John talked about Tide. What a great product that is. Over 100 inventions since it was launched. It just keeps growing. It just keeps strengthening. It was a great brand when it was launched. So was Ivory. Ivory was a breakthrough product when it was introduced in 1857. A breakthrough. Here, people were using a brown soap full of lye to wash. Ivory comes out with purified soap, floats, the whole deal, took over the market, premium price. There was a statistician in Sweden who did an analysis of medical history, and he said Ivory was the greatest medical advance in history. Why? People bathed. All of a sudden, it reduced all these diseases and all these problems. Never recorded, but factual. So here's Ivory, premier, great product. Leading brand for what, 1857 to 1960, so leading brand for 100 years, okay? Never changed. All of a sudden, products come in with moisturizing cream, milder, better fragrance, all this sort of stuff. All of a sudden, Ivory starts to die. Ivory never responded. John and I were both on the periphery there, and we watched some things happening. Ivory never responded. There were reasons for that. It was an iconic brand. Coca-Cola changed their product and almost lost their business. We were nervous about that. But still, we never changed, and Ivory just is almost out of existence today. You probably saw we shut down Ivorydale. Why? People don't use bar soap, but they don't use Ivory. So the point being, if you want a brand to last forever, and by God, we have a lot of them, you have to keep innovating. And that's today's world. It's that simple and tough. But about what can I do to answer the consumer needs? Okay, you know, I can remember there's a story in my book about Dawn. You know, back in the 1960s, Palmolive owned the dishwashing business, and it was always about mildness to hands. Madge had the her hand in there and said, you know, it's all, mildness was it. There was not, the brand equity was mildness. And by gosh, we're gonna make a product that's milder than Palmolive. We put a team against it in our corporate labs in Miami Valley, a top team. Their job, make a surfactant, make a dishwashing liquid that's milder than Palmolive. Top people, they did it. They developed this surfactant that was milder than Palmolive, ready to go to market. Well, one of the guys in the lab tried it on different things. He tried it on grease. Oh my God, this stuff was fabulous on cutting grease. He did the thing he showed the day. He went to the marketing people, said, we got to sell this on grease. No, our brand equity is mildness. We need mildness. Well, the debate went on. The decision was to run a test market. That became Dawn. Dawn has built share, what, 50 years, 60 years? It's the best product. No one's touched it. So if brand equity drove you, no, the consumer drove you. What was important to the consumer? And so that would be my comment. Sure, you're aware of brand equity, but if you can find something that is more important to the consumer and can create a new brand like Dawn, that's what you want to do.
Just on Dawn, I just say Dawn is a classic example of a single visual and statement that establishes the equity in line with the product performance. Dawn takes grease out of your way. Another is Bounty, the quicker picker-upper. You've all seen the demonstration. You can do it in 10 seconds now. 30 seconds is better. But the quicker picker-upper, and in messaging, if we can find a provocative way that gets right to the heart of the benefit the product provides, and keep focused on it in a way that respects different audiences, you've got your brand equity. And I think this thing of the messaging that we've got focused on this performance, Tide's done a very good job on this, I think Always has too, but get rid of all the blah, blah, blah and get down to a really crisp visualization and statement of what the product actually does that's important to the consumer and bring them together, and then you've got a winner.
Yeah, the problem that I see when you try to do everything building off a single brand, if you have a really big idea, making it as a flanker on an existing brand, you'll never see the potential that you would see if you had a new brand. And that's what I worry about. In other words, if Swiffer had become a flanker to Mr. Clean, I don't think we ever would see the kind of tremendous growth we saw with that Swiffer product. I would say another thing. You know, somebody mentioned earlier, Stuart did, about the connections. The company's always been great at making connections, bringing together its technologies. Why did it take so long to do Swiffer? We had cleaning technologies and we had absorbing technologies. Why did it take us so long to bring it together? Why? Because it was stretching? Because it was radical? But did we have the technologies in our house to do it? Yeah. And now, you know, I tell a story. We were selling Mr. Clean, one capful in a bucket. We made about 3 cents. The consumer hated it, and that was our business. We decided to change it, give an absorbent thing, a mop thing. We make $2. The consumer loves it. How's that? That's what you got to do. But no, the point I was trying to make is that we have a lot of tech. How do you tell when you have a big idea? I had a very simple way. I called it the wow concept. I would tell you about what I'm working on. Here's what I'm working on. Here's what it does. And you would say, wow, that sounds terrific. I'd like to try it. Okay, I'd go off and make one. I'd give it to you, and you say, try it. You say, wow, I want to try it again. The wow concept. If you got wow, you had a big idea. It was that simple. If you didn't get it, and you tried to rationalize, well, he didn't really understand what I was saying, then you had a problem. But you get wow answers on those two things, you got a winner.
Bill and Gordon, I would like to give each of you just a minute to do some closing comments and anything that you'd like to say before we finish up here tonight. Bill, let's start with you.
Well, the book process was interesting from a couple points of view. One is, of course, it brought all these great memories of products that we had worked on, most of which were successful, but we had a couple clunkers in there. It sort of reinforced what Procter & Gamble is all about and how it's been so successful for such a long period of time. Obviously, I have a bias spending all my career in research and development, but you look back at the tremendous resources in the company from every function, and you realize just how strong the organization, how much potential there is, and why we aren't creating more of the kind of products that we have. But it was quite a journey for me to reflect on every aspect of my career in the company.
Thank you. Gordon, a few final words. I mean, I'd love to hear what your best moment at P&G was.
Well, the one thing, you know, you say, well, what am I most proud of? And, you know, I think back, the thing I was most proud of was back in 1994 when we won the U.S. Medal of Technology. Procter & Gamble R&D is a technology powerhouse. Amazing people, amazing drive, amazing energy, amazing capability, but we're a consumer products company. I mean, come on. Well, the U.S. Medal of Technology honors the top scientists and engineers in our country every year. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, John Moore, and a host of others, Ed Deming, really our top scientific leaders. Bill and I sat one day and we said, you know, we've got this great technology. We just watch it every day. Why don't we submit ourselves for the U.S. Medal of Technology? And we rallied around and we did it. We submitted 5 products. Tide with bleach, because that was a great step forward. Pampers, ultra-thin Pampers, always. Tartar Control Crest. Pantene, at the time it was Pert Plus, because that was our first execution of 2-in-1 shampoo. And, am I going to miss one? Bounty, I'm sorry, Bounty. So we put forward these 5 products and the technologies in them. We blew them away. The review board, I happened to talk to one of the review board, they said, we were just blown away. That was some of the finest technologies we've seen and evaluated in the history of the U.S. Medal of Technology. Well, that might have been an overstatement, but anyway. Anyway, that was a proud moment. That was a proud moment. It said to me, you know, this company I joined, this R&D organization I joined, we're outstanding. We're the best. And getting that recognition for a consumer products company, a meaningful, you know, it's just a consumer products company getting this U.S. Medal of Technology. I received the award from Bill Clinton, not my political favorite, but okay, Bill Clinton, loved him for what he did. It was a great honor, and really, I have to look at it as you know, the finest memory I have.
Thank you. Thank all of you. Thank you, Gordon, Bill, John, for being here tonight. And thank you, everyone, for attending. I mean, this is kind of what the P&G Alumni Network's all about, the opportunity to have discussions with each other. And
I have to
oh,
say,
jump in. Sorry, go ahead.
I have to say something about the book. We've got the books here. We'd love for you to have one. It's on sale on Amazon for $59.95. They're currently out of stock. Out of stock. We've got the books. We've got the books. We're asking $50, including tax. You'll get a wonderful signature. It's a great book. We haven't even touched on a small sampling of the stories that are in that book. And if you don't like it, bring it back. I'll make sure you get your money back. But you're going to love it. You're going to love it, I guarantee you.
And on that note, we'll close. And there will be a QR code up here behind us for the ebook as well. So there is an e-version available. So please go ahead and purchase one. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate you being here.